Okay, first of all, before we get in, that intro was awesome. Thank you, Bobby, our awesome
That
producer, for making that. That was awesome. Like, oh, what's this?
that
Is
was
this
our
it?
first time watching it too.
Yay! Bobby is dad. Dad, thank you. We appreciate you. But welcome, Huddle Up and Waiters, to a long-awaited episode. I know it's been a couple weeks, but according to my work schedule and Brett's work schedule and just the stuff we got going on, we are now on Friday nights. And guess what?
Bunch
Now
of
we're down to
losers. We have
2
to
weeks.
work.
Sorry, we have to adult, folks. Sorry about that. But anyway,
God,
thank
sucks.
you for being here. Click like and subscribe on Huddle Up and Wait on Fitz Talk Sports Network, on all the other shows they got. Great content,
All of them.
great content on all the boards. So no, I'm just happy to be doing a show, man. And we got a great topic
All,
tonight.
all of us are getting updated looks and all. We see no holds barred. Shout out to them going to NWO look. That's cool. So that's it's just
Love the
everybody's kind of upgrading as we go and just like keep plugging in, putting the work in. And we're just adjusting. Bobby's doing a hell of a job, and Evan's producing tonight, and Alex has been producing. The guys behind the scenes are doing a great job, and it's been we're growing and growing slowly but surely. But man, it's been a fun ride.
I know we're coming in. We got the new intro, and I'm all like Ricky Bobby over here after the first I don't know what to do with my hands.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
But folks, we thought we were going to jump right into our topic tonight. Brett, we got some news we got to talk about. The Cardinals went and said, "All right, DeAndre Hopkins, see you later. We're cutting you 6 days before a post June 1st cut." I didn't get it at first, but they're doing it. They're eating $22 million of his contract, getting rid of him to be a free agent, so they don't have to eat his 2024. He's off the books, and it makes sense. They want a fresh start. He's an older receiver. He wants to go win a championship. That's what he went to Arizona for. That completely blew up. So I'm going to go ahead and ask your prediction right now. Where does he end
up? He wants to win. He wants to go to a team that's like ready to win right now, and a team that like needs something to push him over the hump. That he's that guy. There's a couple of teams that he's been connected to. I know Baltimore has been one. And I can see Baltimore making a push, but at the same time, it's not really their style. But I think the Bills probably make the biggest push. And as much as it pains me to say this, I think the Bills are going to get them because that just completes their offense. I mean, they still need a run game, but I think that them adding Hopkins really makes that offense scary, especially with Diggs.
I think the almighty wizard comes out and he goes, DeAndre Hopkins, you're an Eagle. Because guess what? That would be wide receiver 3. They just fired Quez Watkins. They don't have anybody else after Smith and Brown.
Well, Smith will end up being more of the wide receiver 3 than you. But as well as I could see that happening, I could definitely see that because Howie
monster they needed.
Yeah, Howie doesn't go after. Well, he does. He really gets a lot of his weapons in the offseason. So that would make sense to be his MO. Which that would make them dangerous to help them repeat. Because you look at the explosive offenses. You need explosive and receivers. You can't have enough. So but I think the Bills
in the Super Bowl. They had a wide receiver 3 who couldn't catch. Quez Watkins dropped 3 passes that would have changed the game.
And Smith was kind of I want to say a non-factor, but Smith was kind of hit or miss, so he wasn't really impactful. But Brown's going to be a beast no matter what. So if you get Hopkins with that makes sense. But I can see the Bills, obviously the Eagles. Those are the contenders. Maybe the Ravens, but other than that, I don't know. He wants to go somewhere with the quarterback that's like legit. One team to look out for that I think could really use him, especially with the aging receiver and young receivers always injured, is the Chargers.
But they went and got Quentin Johnston. They got Mike Williams. They got Keenan Allen, and they also got Joshua Palmer, who they love.
Keenan Allen, the only reliable one you mentioned right now is Palmer. Keenan Allen is constantly banged up and hurt. When he's healthy, he's very good. But they need somebody that they can rely on all season. And then Keenan Allen can be that, he can be an inside guy and just create problems. And then Mike Williams can be the big, and then you can rest your rookie.
One problem.
What? Yeah, you have to see what kind of cash they would have. But honestly, as much as I love Keenan Allen, if I can get DeAndre Hopkins, I might do that and trade Allen.
I don't know, man. He's got a big contract to move right now, and Hopkins, as much as people say, "Oh, he could just sign for cheap," he's not gonna. It's the J.J. Watt thing all over again.
No, he's not going to sign cheap. No, that's not going to happen. Although you might be able to kind of lure him in with a cheap cap hit because you could probably get him with some bonuses to get him to
use
sign.
those words. Super Bowl. He's from Super Bowl. Hey, we were in the Super Bowl. Like you could use those terminology for a player who wants one.
So cheap is a relevant term because the money's there all the time. It's just whether they get it in bonus or how they're getting the money.
Incentives,
so it's
yada yada.
Yeah, they can just kind of throw them a bunch of cash up front. Like, here's a signing bonus, and then come play with us.
Well, I mean that's why I picked Philly because Howie's always the wild card. I mean, him and Brett Veach are the two guys as GMs. I'm always like, man, there's free agents on the market. I'm not looking past those two.
I mean, the Chiefs make a ton of sense, and everybody wants to play with Patrick Mahomes. Look, if I'm a receiver on the market, I want to play with Patrick Mahomes. Period. It doesn't matter. I want to play with the best quarterbacks. I want to play with Josh Allen. I want to play with Joe Burrow. Yeah. I don't care that the Chiefs have too many receivers. I want to go play there because Joe Burrow's there. I'm just sorry, Bengals. But the Chiefs, they have receivers, but nobody at Hopkins level. But
no
do
one
they
that
need
build
that?
Size, speed, hands, nothing. There's no one there. Except Kelsey, but tight end. Wide receiver,
right, but
there's no one in that room.
Does their offense work better with or without it? Because they won with Tyreek and they won without Tyreek. So, you know what I mean? So, I can see the Chiefs doing it, but I could also see the Chiefs balking like, yeah, we don't need to spend that kind of money because our offense is going to click no matter what. But I could also see it because Andy Reid also was a big part of signing Terrell Owens years ago. So.
But they also go ahead and do here's the Lombardi, DeAndre. Come and look, you can have these. We just won 2 in 5 years.
I mean, DeAndre knows that the Chiefs are going to be in the runnings no matter what. He knows he's on a playoff team, a well-coached team, and the teams got their shit together no matter what. If he goes to the Eagles, he knows he has a team that's in the window to win now. And if he goes to the Bills, he's also on a team that's got in the window to win now. But he knows those 3 teams are going to compete no matter what. But my money, for some reason, the Bills, I would love to be wrong, the Bills keep sticking out to me as the team that they feel like this puts Josh Allen over the hump. Because Davis kind of took a step back. Gabe Davis is a solid receiver, took a step back. And outside of Stephon Diggs, the receivers are kind of inconsistent. So I really think that Hopkins and Diggs makes a dangerous duo at receiver.
Okay, hear me out. This guy's got a big cap hit savings. If this team gets rid of him, this could be like my Madden franchise mode to make the ultimate offense, and it would just be super freaking stupid. Cut Tyler Boyd, go sign DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins.
So I see where you're going with that.
And they'd save money because Boyd's contract is really big right now.
I mean, well, that makes sense. Man. Super team.
Yeah,
I mean, you make a super team, but there's only one ball, and do you have enough? I don't know. That's tough. I like the idea.
2 years removed from Super Bowl, and last year they almost made it again.
But I think you like the idea of playing with Chase and Higgins and all that, but and Burrow, like I just said that. But would he rather play for a team that has a good quarterback and he's the only or the number one target? But no matter what, actually, no matter who he goes to, he said he wants to play with Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and all them, but they all have guys that they throw to the most. The only one who doesn't know, because Mahomes has Kelsey. So there you go. I mean, it doesn't really matter where he goes. He's not always going to be the number one. They already have a high volume guy. So, and they spread the ball around. So he's going to be a target no matter what. He's going to get his touches. But if all he cares about is just going out there playing and winning, I think he's got a lot of options that will play well for him.
Does he pull the rival card and go to the 49ers?
I don't see it because of the quarterback situation. It's not stable enough for him. And I don't blame him.
Oh, yeah, the good quarterback.
He's at the point of his career where he wants to win. And Debo and Ayuk are already studs. And, yeah, you can bring in Hopkins, who's still an elite receiver. But you're looking at it like, well, I got Hopkins and I got to keep him happy because he is the kind of guy that will tell you he's not happy. But with that, I like Purdy. Purdy, a lot of respect to Purdy, but it's not stable enough. And to me, if I'm Hopkins, I'm not looking at the 49ers because I'm looking at these big time quarterbacks that can help me to a Super Bowl. But if I'm Hopkins and I already won a ring in that situation, then I might look at the 49ers and like, okay, I have a chance to win. And if not, I already won, I can get paid. Like Tyreek with the Dolphins. Yeah, I have a chance to win there. And if not, I've already won and I'm getting paid, so I'm good. You know what I mean? So in his situation, he wants to win. He wants a Super Bowl before he retires. He's going to be like Odell with the Rams. So he probably sees what Odell did and went to the Rams. So maybe that makes sense for the Bengals, that super team. You know what I mean? So maybe. So maybe that idea makes sense.
Or the Buffalo super team.
Right. Yeah. Maybe.
With Gabriel Davis, Stephon Diggs, and DeAndre Hopkins.
Right. And then Dalton Kincaid they just drafted, and then I think they still have Dawson Knox. And if James Cook does well, and some of these other guys do well, you don't know. Like so, Buffalo.
Now, another rival. What about the Jets? Now they have Aaron Rodgers. You have Saleh and Douglas, who have been together for 2 years before now, going into their third year.
Yeah.
So you have a competent front office. You have a good quarterback. He says he wants a good defense on the side.
They have a good defense. Right.
And the Bills, to me, listen, I'm not hating on the Bills defense, but they took a big lump in losing Tremaine Edmonds.
They took a step back last year not having Tre'Davious White. And
but now you're losing a guy rather than just injury.
Yeah. No, I do. I mean, like they already took it. Like last year, they already had some struggles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you take the heart and soul in the middle of your defense. Now, don't get me wrong. I know they're not a bad defense, and their defense is more than good enough because their offense. But is that what Hopkins is saying? Like Hopkins is saying he wants a complete team.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that would knock the Chiefs out of the running, right?
No, because their defense just won it. Spagnuolo, it doesn't matter what he has. If it's rotten, moldy rye bread or if it's fresh white bread off the shelf, he makes it work.
Hey, give me 1 second, Dave.
No, I will not give you 1 second. Anyways,
I can't hear.
Bret is having technical difficulties even before the show, and now he's got his trucker headset on now. Hey, Bandit, you got a 10-4 on those Piggly Wigglies up front? Yeah, for all you young folk, you wouldn't understand that. Go watch Smokey and the Bandit. All right, let's jump into our topic. Bret, you announce it. You're the one who came up with this, brought it to me, and I loved it. Go ahead and announce it. Nope, hold on. Can't hear you.
Muted. All right.
There you go.
So I had this idea. This is the lull of the offseason. We're like the biggest news is DeAndre Hopkins. We just spent like 10 minutes talking about, right? Like there's not a lot of offseason moves unless there's trades, whatever, injuries, all that kind of stuff. Oh, good night, hugs. So the we're talking about like what do we talk about? So I came up with the idea that I was just cutting the grass one day and I was thinking about like somebody had mentioned Justin Blackman and I started thinking about like man what he could have been and started thinking about players that I'm like man these guys are just what could have been if they didn't get injured, didn't have the bad attitude, or if they knew then what they know now and all this
off-field issues too, not just bad attitude.
Yeah,
all that stuff.
So I started thinking about I want to create a team and do a couple people per position. It's just kind of who could have been good in the NFL. Talent wasn't really the question. Maybe it was more attitude or off the field issues or whatever, or just injuries, just constant injury plug. So, I came up with some guys. I try to avoid low-hanging fruit, but this is called the all-pro team that never was. So, like, avoid that low-hanging fruit. What I mean, like Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson. Obviously, their careers were cut short, but they're both Hall of Famers, and we already know if they stayed longer, they would have been shattering records.
We're talking about cut short way sooner.
Yeah, I'm talking, and so I want to we get started in here. You'll see two of my guys, their careers ended before they even started. So, and I think both of them, one more than the other, had the talent, and it's just kind of heartbreaking to see, like, especially one of them, like, not make it and he could have made it. And then the other one made it for a couple years, and then that was it. Injuries just piled up. So Dave kicked around some names. I kicked around some names, and we both have different philosophy. We both have different players. Today, we're only going to discuss quarterback and running back. Next show, we're going to talk about like maybe some wide receivers, tight ends, and then the next week we're going to start on defense. Or the next show after that, we'll start on defense. It's going to be a series. And then we got another series coming that came up with too. So we got some fun stuff this off season to talk about. It's going to be fun. Just keep it interesting, keep it fun. So with that all said,
Charlie Day says in Sonny's Always Philadelphia.
So let's get started. Dave, I want you to go first. Oh, I don't know how our graphics are set up. How are the graphics set up?
I don't know, Costanza. Who's going first?
Who do you want us to go first? Talk to us, boys.
God? Oh, he's probably using the Canadian Maple Leaf bathroom right now.
Apparently my headphones got wet when I was power washing yesterday, so I got to dry them out.
Evan, oh, there we go.
I'm all right.
The ghost showed up. Evan, who do you want us to who do you have the graphic ready first? All right. I guess we'll start off with mine, jumping right into it. Obviously he's the cliche bust, but Ryan Leaf. I mean, I loved his talent coming out of college. He was the projected possible number one pick. He didn't go number one in 1998. That was Peyton Manning, and those two have been tied together for so long. Ryan Leaf was only in the league from 1998 to 2001. He'd gotten in trouble in the off-field issues and other stuff with that. So I don't know what's going on. Oh, another technical difficulties, folks. Give us 1 minute.
I got you. I'm back.
Okay.
I'm good. Yep.
All right. But yeah, Ryan Leaf, like I said, had trouble in the off the field issues, cut his career short. For some reason, it never translated from college to the NFL, and he had a talent for an arm. The guy was ridiculous in the fact of he could hit any throw in college. Doesn't matter what it was. If it was a touch throw, a strong arm pierce throw through three defenders, he hit it. But for some reason, mentally, he never made that jump into handling the pressure of being a franchise QB, because that's what the Chargers drafted him for, was to be that franchise QB, and it just never stuck. And then he got this ego because he was that high draft pick, and he just thought he could never be touched, and a lot of off-field issues hit him, and it landed him in prison. And thank God Ryan Leaf is now an analyst on Good Morning Football. We see a lot now whenever he replaces guys like Peter Schrager and other stuff like that. And I'm glad he's doing well now. But
completely different guy.
What could have been?
That's a comeback story there. Like with at least with the personality.
That's a movie. That's a movie right there.
Yeah, he was like just this arrogant jerk that nobody wanted to work with, play with, and he realized it far too late. And the talent was never a question with him whatsoever. So like I just don't like. I wish we could have seen what he could have been. There was a reason that him and Peyton Manning were like 1 and 2, and it wasn't one of those like, okay, they got the second best or whatever. No, they were legit 1 and 2. Now Peyton Manning was more talented, but I mean Ryan Leaf, people don't understand like how good he was, how talented he was.
And a lot of people said, "Oh, Washington State, that's where he came from." Like, no. Schools go out of it at this point. Ryan Leaf, you go back and look at his tape and what he accomplished and what he did, you can put him in any school across the country and he'd still produce the same way. But it's the way he handled it mentally going forward in the NFL. And it's just sad to see because that guy had it all in his lap. He was ready to go and he just couldn't handle the pressure. That's what it came down to. He even said it. It was the pressure mentally of being everything put on him. He had to carry everything. He ended up blowing up at his wife and everything else and his friends, and he said he had nothing at one point.
And let's face it, the Chargers were not in a good situation back then.
Nope.
They were a rough franchise. Now, they've drafted 3 quarterbacks. 3 quarterbacks. In basically in the first round. Drew Brees was a second-round pick, but it was a 32nd overall. But they had a chance to draft Mike Vick, but they traded down with the Falcons. And they got LaDainian Thompson that worked out pretty well for him, and Drew Brees in the same draft. And they drafted Ryan Leaf. A few years later, drafted Drew Brees. And then they were first overall again, drafted Philip Rivers. So they were second overall.
Well, no, they drafted Eli and they traded for Philip, remember?
Right, yeah. I mean, I was going to get the semantics of it, but they were still, they were.
Eli was a Charger, damn it.
They had a second overall pick, and they drafted Eli. What was that? The first? They had the first that year.
I think it was the first, and then they swapped.
Yeah, so second overall pick, and I believe they had the first overall pick the year they got they got Tomlinson because the Falcons traded up to 1, I believe, for Vic.
Mm-hmm.
And then they went and got, or then they had Philip Rivers or Eli Manning the first overall. So, I mean, that's the kind of franchise the Chargers were that he was going into. Just to put that in perspective, after him, they still couldn't figure it out. And then they finally figured it out with Schottenheimer. They were a good team, and then that fell apart and so on and so forth.
Well, think of it. The last time they made a Super Bowl is when the 49ers and Steve Young went 6 touchdowns on them and went full-on MVP mode in that game. I mean, the Chargers, they could have put the best defense on the field that game for every part of their generation of franchise, and it still wouldn't have mattered. Like, Steve Young was unstoppable that day. It's just how it was, and they never recovered from that. They still haven't. They've gotten close to getting back to AFC championships, or they've gotten close to play at divisional playoff rounds, but they've never been back to the Super Bowl since that game.
Nope, and they've struggled ever since
then. My other guy I wanted to jump into, Keely Smith. Woo-hoo! You talk about a guy that could run a little bit, wasn't really a runner compared to, say, a Justin Fields coming out of college, but he could do everything. Keely could sling the ball, man. I remember watching the 1999 draft, and the Bengals told the Saints no. They told them no. The Saints tried to trade up and give them 9 draft picks for Ricky Williams. They wanted Ricky Williams. They wouldn't do it. They thought Keely Smith was the answer to all their salvation, because I remember I think Cincinnati had drafted a couple years prior Dave Killinger, and he thought he was the Messiah, and he ended up being a bust. And they just we can't let this slip by again. And Keely ended up playing only 13 games, going 3-12. They sat him. He started once in 2001, and his career was over. It just fell off a cliff.
And what people don't know about him is he actually went to
I believe it was Oregon, wasn't it?
Yeah, but he was at a small college before that. He was at a JUCO before that, I believe. Grossmont College at a JUCO in San Diego. And then he played Oregon 1 year, shot up draft boards, and the Bengals were like, oh, yeah, this is our guy. And then oh, no, we didn't do our homework. And
he was that's what you call the 1 year wonder in the college terms. Mm-hmm. The whole, hey, don't be bitten by that snake of the 1 year wonders. Don't do that. And that's the reason why for guys like Keely Smith. Well, I wouldn't even say Trubisky, because at least Keely Smith had 1.5 years starting. Mitch Trubisky didn't even have 10 games under his belt.
That's true.
That's the thing. Keely at least had 1.5 years, so he had the experience of being a full-time starter at least. And I mean, throwing 32 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Yeah, that's producing, and that's back in the Pac Series days when you got USC and everyone else being good back in the 90s, man. That was the heavy hitters.
To be fair, back then, if you didn't catch on right away as a quarterback, it was it. There's no development. It was you called on, you were gone. So. And the Bengals at the time, again, another franchise that wasn't run very well, because guess what? In 2003, 4 years after they had drafted Keely Smith, they were back first overall again. This time, I think they got it right with Carson Palmer. I think they got it right with their coach, Marvin Lewis, and I think they had a run. They were at least, even though they didn't win a playoff game, they were always in it every year, and they get to the playoffs and they would choke it away, but they were always a good, respectable team.
2 moments that altered their franchise. Can you imagine the 9 draft picks they could have used instead and change of swapping, still taking Keely Smith, dropping down, still getting your guy, getting the draft picks, but you stayed and you let another team get those 9 picks from the famous Mike Ditka. Here's my whole draft list. I just, to me, if I'm a GM, I don't care if what player is worth that you don't move for 9 draft picks.
And I like the fact that you chose Achilles Smith. And you know why?
Why?
Because it segues me right into my guy, because he was taking the first overall pick that year.
I know.
2 of the 3. Yeah, only one quarterback was actually,
I know who the other one is.
That was McNabb. But my guy, and it segues it, the first overall pick that year, another AFC North team, Tim Couch. Now, Tim Couch is different. He had all the tools. This kid just was a good athlete. He was actually a better basketball player than a football player, which is why I have him on this list, because people actually they said he loved basketball more than he loved football. He was better throwing the ball than he was running the ball or than playing basketball. But a lot of people believe he loved basketball more than he loved football, and that's why he kind of struggled. His heart and head wasn't in it. And then he goes to a franchise that was just absolute horrid. After Belichick left, and they came back as a franchise and left to Baltimore, came back as a franchise. It was just a train wreck expansion program.
Yeah.
And he was a part of that expansion. And no one talks about him being a part of the expansion the same way that they talk about David Carr. Everybody looks at David Carr, and he's the one quarterback that everybody says it really wasn't his fault. He went in a really shitty situation. But so did Tim Couch. Tim Couch just went into a tough situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still a lot of on him, but I think he had the tools, and you kind of wonder if he went to a different team, how well he could have done, because he had the ability. And if he had loved the game, if he had actually been more interested in football, he could have been good. The tools were there. Everything was there. He had the moxie and his athleticism. I'm not saying he's like this crazy athlete, but he was a good enough athlete. And he was, you watch him play, you could see it. Almost every play, you could see there's potential. And there's one game he actually led the Browns to a win, and like an improbable win. You're like, man, if he could do that, like every
Wasn't that
game,
against the Steelers in the regular season?
I think so. And it was like,
and then next week they played the Steelers in the playoffs and they lost. Wasn't that
right?
It?
I think so. And it was like, man, that was a gutsy performance. He played well. He left it all out there, and then it was just fell flat the next week. So it's like the talent was there. It just never accumulated to anything.
No, I'm surprised he didn't become an analyst, because he had a bright IQ. Like, the guy was intelligent as a player. So I'm surprised we didn't see him as an analyst or a TV analyst, something.
Yeah, and everybody knows about Tim Couch, and it's a joke, and how he was a bust and one of the bigger busts at quarterbacks. But but the Browns, they were just such a terrible franchise, and and you think about this for a second. If you already don't love football, and there's plenty of guys in the NFL that don't love football, but they're good at it, so they do it. I know people who I work with that don't love what they do, but they're good at it, so they do it. Okay, and whatever. And I'm bad at it, but I love it. I'm just kidding. So,
folks, you sent me so many pictures of broken parts. Don't let them lie to you.
I may or may not have fixed them. So,
GB Weld.
Think about something real quick. Like, I don't want to get too long on the quarterback thing, but like Tim Couch, think about this. All right, you're going to who was a hot team at the time that was a good team
in 1999.
Yeah.
I mean, you will look even
the
before
Rams
Kurt Warner got there. Good to go do the Rams because remember they had
the
Trent
Titans.
Green. He got hurt.
Yeah, the Titans. Like you go to one of those teams. The Jets or Dolphins. At the time, the Jets actually doing pretty good. And it's like, you're all of a sudden like, you know what? I love football, playing with this winning program. But if I'm already like on the fence, like, do I really want to play football? I really want to play basketball. Then I end up with a franchise like the Browns. It's pretty easy to just mentally quit. I mean, it's pretty easy to do that. My next guy,
you see the jersey with 5 names below you or 8 names above you that you had to go through and put that up. Like, come on, like you have to live on how many? You're the 9th quarterback out of all these busted quarterbacks since Bernie Kosar. Yeah, of course you feel the pressure.
Exactly. And then my next guy, Jason White from Oklahoma.
Jason White.
Now this guy, like, we don't know what he would have been in the NFL. So like
lost unicorn.
So where I went to Jason White because I started saying Sam Bradford, and I'm like, Sam Bradford still had a longer career, even as a backup spot starter. And I think Sam Bradford, wasn't for injuries, if his body didn't get destroyed like Chad Pennington, how good could he have been? But, we kind of saw enough of it. Same thing with Robert Griffin, like we saw it. Maybe if he never got hurt from the beginning, but Jason White's the guy who got hurt before he could really get into the NFL. But people don't realize, if you weren't around then, if you were too young, you didn't realize how good that Oklahoma team was. Adrian Peterson and them, and then Boise State upset them. That was pretty crazy. But that Oklahoma team was good. And Jason White, they weren't known for offense, and Jason White gave him an offense. Adrian Peterson gave him an offense, and White did his job. And at the time that he would have been drafted, he could have been that quarterback that fit the role of what they do, of what NFL teams were doing at the time. Like teams like the Dolphins with Ricky Williams, he would have been a perfect fit right there with them running the football. All he had to do was just be accurate and do what he does best. Mm-hmm. And the injuries never allowed him to materialize into the NFL. He retired shortly after, I think, his rookie year. The injuries piled up in college, the injuries piled up in the NFL, all right away. And it was just, he called it quits before it became a problem. And it's a shame because I think he maybe could have developed into something, but part of the reason he wasn't drafted higher is because of injuries. And yeah, he lacked some of the tools, but the one thing that he didn't lack was up here. He was very intelligent and he could read a defense. And I think he was the kind of guy that could have been like a Phillip Rivers-esque kind of player where like he could overcome all the shortcomings because he's extremely intelligent, but those injuries kind of just derailed everything.
Yeah, I remember there was hype coming out for him.
Mm-hmm. But it was injury bug just destroyed him.
Yeah.
Nope.
All right, so you rolling into to running backs?
Running backs. Yeah, let's do running backs. You go talk for a little bit, Dave. Let's talk about your running backs.
Way to go, Costanza jumping the gun. Yeah. All right. Some youngins may not know these names from back in the mid-'90s.
One already hurts.
Watching these two lightning rods hit the end zone, they took college football by storm in their junior year in 1995. Ironically, both of them. Lawrence Phillips, 6 foot, 215 pounds, built like the prototypical running back in that era. He had everything. He could pass block. He could catch. He played for Nebraska. And folks, if you ever have to say it, go on YouTube and watch his highlights. Just watch him run. He was Adrian Peterson, built specifically before Adrian Peterson existed in college. Like if you go back and look, Lawrence Phillips was that dude, but the guy that had really, Alex.
Yeah.
First time listener here, read that. I hate you, Alex. Anyways, Lawrence Phillips had a lot of off-field issues. He was being chased by demons a lot in his past and ended up catching up to him. You even had guys like you had Steve McNair at the time. You had Steve Young. You had a lot of these good NFL players come out and talked about him in the documentary, saying, "Guys, there was this guy in college that we saw play in the '90s, and he had it all. It was Lawrence Phillips. He couldn't outrun his own mind, and he ended up having a couple domestic violence and domestic assaults. It was an ongoing chase in this off-field stuff, and it just sucked because we're all about mental health, and it's just a guy that seemed like he was always asking for help on or off the field. And back then, players never really got it. That like compared to today, back then they never really got that mental help if they asked for it. And there was a record that a couple times he did go to the teams he did play for, like the Rams or Nebraska, and said, I need help. I need you guys to help me get this thing right with myself. And they never did. And it just sucks because this guy was the next big thing in college football going to the NFL. He was picked 6th overall to the Rams. I mean, he was there before Marshall Faulk went to the Rams. Like Marshall Faulk was currently on the Colts at the time. And that's the reason why the Rams went and got him, because they didn't have a running back. Phillips busted out. He played, I think, for, 13 games, 15 games, something like that, less than a season. He had trouble staying healthy, and then he went to the CFL, as Evan put in. I mean, it just all added up. And then, I mean, sadly, he got found in his jail cell in 2016, and he was unresponsive. It just sucks to read because he was one of the best talents I remember watching as a kid and being like, Jesus, this guy's going to be special.
Yeah, and he was a guy just so talented, he just couldn't get his head together. And it just ended up just being the end of it. Honestly, it was the death of him because he did pass away in prison about 7-8 years ago now. So
Mm-hmm.
he was only like 40 years old. So he I mean, he's the talent was there for sure. Explosive, strong player. And at the time of the era that he got drafted in, he was a perfect fit. 96. They ran the ball heavy back then. They relied on their running backs. Eddie George, Marshall Faulk, Sean Alexander, all these guys during that time. These guys were looked at. Ricky Williams, Priest Holmes, Jamal Lewis, all these guys were there. Oh, Jerome Bettis. So that's what teams were doing. They wanted that explosive running back. And his error, like you said, like Adrian Peterson and Zeke Elliott of his time. Like he was that explosive back, and he was that guy that like you wanted running the ball to change your offense. And anytime he touched the ball, he was a threat to take it the distance. And you were not bringing him down with arm tackles either. You
needed 3 people to take him down in college.
So not only was he probably one of the fastest players on the field, but he's also one of the strongest. So he was insane to watch. And it was just it just sucks to see guys that like just can't get their life together to live that dream. And it makes you sad for one of my guys. And I'll segue that when you talk after you talk about your other guy.
Yep. My next guy was a part of the same draft class in 1996, Tim Biakpatuka out of Michigan. So this is an NFL altering situation here because he set his junior year the all-time rushing record in Michigan at the time, which was unheard of because Michigan had stats that stood for 30, 40 years underneath old Bo Schembechler. And now that game, he put up 313 yards against Ohio State, convinced the Panthers at 8. He is our guy. We want him. 6 foot, 215 pounds, same build as Lawrence Phillips. 2 prototypical built running backs that could do everything. The guy just burst onto the scene his junior year at Michigan after following Wheatley. And I remember watching him and Lawrence Phillips just every other week. It was just highlight for highlight, going back and forth. And with Biakpatuka, he had this knack for just being shifty, like for getting out of stuff you would almost Barry Sanders-esque like. But it's the fact that you'd think you'd have 3 guys on him and somehow he'd slip out and he'd be turning the corner and spin moving. It would look like NCAA college football game came to life. You're using the spin move, the juke move, the stiff arm. He did that all in college. Now he came to the NFL, played for 3 seasons with the Panthers, went to a couple other teams, and then he ended up fading out. And that's a guy, and it was hampered by injuries. He was constantly injured. He had good games for the Panthers, but then as soon as he get breathed on, he was hurt.
And again, expansion franchise. He was drafted that was the Panthers' inaugural year, I think.
They would have took Eddie George if Eddie George had the better performance against Michigan versus Ohio State. So Eddie George ended up going to the Houston Oilers instead. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the Tennessee Titans. Yeah, that was the expansion year. When he ended up going to the Tennessee Titans, and no, was that the Oilers?
That was the Oilers. I don't think they became the Titans until 97.
Are you sure? I swore the Titans got expanded in 96.
No,
it was the Oilers.
Sorry.
It was the Oilers.
No. So they were Houston Oilers until 96. Then they were the Tennessee Oilers from 97
That's
to 98.
what it was.
And then in 99, they went to the Titans.
Because they played in the baby blues and the white helmets, just like that. That's what it was. They had to play in that hybrid jersey.
I know when he was drafted, him and McNair played in the Oiler uniform. They were Houston Oilers, and then the next year they were the Tennessee Oilers.
I got cards in my closet right now of Frank Wycheck, Kevin Dyson, all these guys in those uniforms. And that's why I was like, No, they were an Oiler for a year. But Eddie George got taken by the Tennessee Oilers at the time, hashtag Tennessee Titans. And it was because Tim Biakabatuka from Michigan had the better game against Ohio State rather than vice versa. If it was Eddie that had the better game, they would have took him. So how big of a altering change franchise move is that like if they had taken Eddie, Panthers would have had some success for Eddie years and years and years and years, letting him run. And they didn't have the quarterback there, but he still would have been successful on the ground, and they would have had people there.
They had 28-year-old rookie Chris Winkie. Actually, I think it was 26, but still.
Chris Winkie!
Actually, Chris Winkie's a fantastic quarterback coach right now.
Okay, but that's what usually bad NFL quarterbacks are, is really good quarterback coaches.
You tell me John Beck was not a legend? Oh, anyway.
Do we really need to go over this right now?
Nope. No, we're gonna move on.
Hey, Alex, I just want to answer your question. The Dolphins are going 8-9 or 9-8, not making the playoffs. Just saying.
I'm not playing 34 games. Oh, you mean?
I said 8-9 or 9-8, and they're not making the playoffs. I'm just answering Alex's question.
All right.
So he wants to troll the show.
So to segue off of yours, I'm actually going to flip my guys, and I'm going to talk about my second guy here. So what I said about Lawrence Phillips, like being this athlete, this freak athlete that couldn't get his head together, what kind of is disappointing and sad to see is Marcus Lattimore had the head. His head was right. Such a class act kid. His heart was in it. He loved football. And it's still gut-wrenching to this day when I see his injury, probably the worst knee injury I've seen at South Carolina.
It was just swinging.
His knee never recovered, and that was at a day and age where they could fix knees. He never recovered. He never became the same guy. He was a beast, and I almost guarantee you he's a first-round pick without that knee injury, and was probably the best running back in the NFL for at least a few years. He would have been a problem.
Time out real quick. I just want to give props to San Francisco 49ers on giving him a 1-year contract so he could have NFL insurance and being able to get his knee and his body taken care of and getting right. That is ultimate respect right there for me.
And they gave him a legit shot to play if he could get cleared. He just never could get that knee right.
But they did it for that purpose, to make sure he was covered.
And what a fantastic kid. And you just see, like, watching that interview with him and just seeing him break down in emotion just made you feel for the kid. And then it makes you frustrated for the guys who take it for granted.
So he pity cried onto your list? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. No, he was – I had him high on my draft board. I'm like, this kid is good.
Yeah.
And just that knee injury just was devastating. And you saw Todd Gurley flame out of the league after just a handful of years, after easily being one of the best. So it's just these knees and the way they fix these knees in college, it doesn't work. And maybe they didn't. I've seen people get into dirt bike wrecks that hurt their knee and leg, and then they get the leg amputated because it doesn't heal right, or medical malpractice. And it's just a shame, because it's like Willis McGahee. Love Willis McGahee. He hurts his knee, has a nasty knee injury on national television, on a national championship game.
The championship game. I remember watching that.
Comes back and has one hell of an NFL career, and then Marcus Lattimore, similar look like knee injury, maybe worse. And then it's like, but his career was over. It's like, it sucks, man. It just wish he could have had a Willis McGahee trajectory.
It's how the bodies respond, man. It's just like, it could be that Marcus Lattimore's body just never took to that recovering part compared to what Willis McGahee did.
Right. And it sucked, because and I love how McGahee had himself a long-term career. While his career ended probably earlier than you would have wanted to see, he was still an effective back for years. And, like, the knee injury kind of shortened his career a little bit, but he still had one hell of a career, was still respected, and that was great for him. But it just sucks for a guy like Lattimore, who just never got the chance. And the other guy started to get a chance, was explosive, and that's Cadillac Williams. Dolphin fans, you remember Cadillac Williams because of Ronnie Brown. We took Ronnie Brown over Cadillac, which was fine. But Cadillac was explosive. He was that dude, and I immediately saw it. And this is no disrespect to Ronnie Brown. I saw Cadillac. I'm like, oh, shit, did we take the wrong back? This dude is a beast, and I believe Cedric Benson went ahead of him. And I'm like, this kid is legit. Holy hell! And then he was so good, so explosive, such an angry runner, like Thomas Jones. Those guys are like my favorite backs to use in Madden and stuff because they were so angry. But Cadillac was so explosive. His cuts, and this is going to sound nuts, reminded me of LaDainian Tomlinson because they were so crisp and sharp and so aggressive. He can cut on a dime and get upfield. Man, he was so explosive. And like his knee, he had multiple knee injuries, and I remember one of the last knee injuries he had. He hurt the same knee. He had come back, was ready to prove it. He had stepped and it went down with no contact, and you heard him on the sideline. Are you fucking kidding me? Like he was so pissed off. The dude loved the game. His passion was like unmatched, and it just sucked because man, he was killing it for the Buccaneers. And he just destroyed that knee, and he just couldn't keep that knee healthy. If it wasn't, he only played for a couple years.
Yeah.
But man, if it wasn't for that knee, Cadillac Williams would have been the best back from that draft. Ronnie Brown had himself a good career. Hats off to Ronnie Brown. The whole Wildcat thing changed the NFL. And I love Ronnie Brown and everything he brought to the Dolphins. And if the Dolphins made that pick with the healthy Cadillac Williams, I'd still be okay with it. But Cadillac Williams was that dude. Like, he was so damn good. And it just sucks to see, like, his career got cut way too short. He was just a beast. But apparently his knee couldn't hold up.
That's the point of our teams, man, is the all-pro team that never was. The talents that are there that could have made NFL history and taken their ceilings to new heights with their talent they had. And it's just how it is. Injuries, off-field issues, mental problems, like that. These are things that are real, and it's also too. I like this series because it brings a lot of things to light. A lot of people don't know.
Yeah, and the passion that Williams had, holy hell, man! Like, you want that. Like he played with that fire, like LaDainian Tomlinson. And at the running back position, I get excited when I see guys like that, like Frank Gore and stuff. I love running backs like that.
Speaking of Frank Gore, 2 torn ACLs and came back from both.
Yeah. Yeah, so some guys, and then never really got hurt in the NFL. It's so weird. It's so crazy how that happens. Like Willis McGahee, he was rarely hurt in the NFL. I think he was banged up and never like hurt. So it's a shame. But all my guys, I think, all had the talent. 3 of them were just injury. One of them was just a question of situation and did he love the game? And if he did love the game, you know, like, or if he ended up loving the game, how much better could it have been? Had any of these other guys, like Cadillac, Marcus Lattimore, been healthy and didn't have the knee injuries, how good could they have been? And I think both of them would have been household names.
So my buddy Jay is mad at me because I didn't put on Bo Jackson. And I didn't, because Bo Jackson, even though he played for a couple of years, was still a highlight machine. But he didn't love the game of football. He loved baseball. He played football.
The thing about Bo Jackson is, again, to me,
it was a nasty injury.
Yeah, and you and I are talking, like, I also want to engage the listeners more. Like, and Bo Jackson, I think, is too low-hanging fruit, too easy. So I'm actually proud of us for going with guys that, like, were not on that list, that were not, like, right there, because it's just too obvious. Yeah, we could just do Bo Jackson, Barry Sanders, and not talk about it and be done with it. But everybody already knows that. Let's think outside the box. Let's get guys that we're not talking about. We know about Bo Jackson, that just a rare player that you don't find, but you know, we talk about him. We talk about that to death, honestly. And I have another guy for the wide receiver I can't wait to talk about next week too.
Oh, I can't wait. Oh, I mean 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yep. Our next show in 2 weeks. This is going to be a fun show. I mean, like it's just kind of like a what if, and you know, we're kind of playing like fantasy GMs here.
Like, at the end for the offense, for the graphics, I want our producers to make a list of like all the positions we had for offense and then defense and then the names side by side.
Yep. I think it'd be really cool. Hopefully we have different players. If we have same, it's okay. But
I think we might have a few because we go pretty in depth with our players that from what I've seen. Like you grabbed Jason White, I grabbed Akili Smith. I grabbed Tim Biaka-Patuka, and I know you hate him because he's a Michigan running back.
No, I like Tyrone
Don't
Wheatley.
Lie to me.
I like Tyrone. That was before I became a Ohio State fan. I became that because of my wife.
Buckeye tree is staring me in the face. Don't lie to me. Anyways, no, and then you go ahead and have the players you had put out. Like it's just there's different reasonings there, and it's through different lenses, and I like that. This is what makes the series fun.
I really like the fact that we had different players. We were texting yesterday. I was like, "Oh, this is awesome." And Achilles Smith was mentioned a couple times. Like, no, I don't have him on my list. Like, I actually kind of forgot about Achilles Smith. Not only forgot about, but I was like, Tim Couch was the first one that came to mind when I was doing this by position, and wide receiver came to mind with a couple players, and originally it started with Justin Blackman. You got, yeah. But it started like Justin Blackman's and guys like that, and like guys that like showed that they could play in the NFL that just kind of disappeared. With the Josh Cribbs, those guys kind of got not Josh Cribbs, Josh Gordon. So those kind of guys just kind of popped up, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I could do a whole series on this.
Josh Gordon's still, to me, a whole other subject because he was also forced out by the NFL when all the states are legalizing all the weed that he did, and
that's why I wouldn't really use. I already gave away Justin Blackman. I'm not necessarily use
shut up.
Or Gordon, but what I'm saying is, just thinking about those guys, what could have been, set me on this path of this, and I was like, this is gonna be a fun show, and I guarantee you, the people watching it will be like, oh, don't forget about so and so. I've always thought about if so and so never happened.
That's the whole point.
Yeah. So by all means, comment. I'm looking forward to reading the comments. And maybe we'll look at some of the comments to next week and kind of recap some of those about other guys, and maybe talk about them a little bit. So,
of course,
this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I almost picked Andre Ware instead of Achilles Smith, but I was
he was on my list too for that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Andre Ware was hyped beyond belief coming out of college.
Yeah, he was.
Anyways, folks, thank you for having us and joining us tonight. Thank you for listening to our players that never was, the all pros that never was. But again, remember, like and subscribe, Huddle Up and Wait. Like and subscribe, Finch Talk Sports Network. All the other great content we have on here, all the other shows. I like the show Bret mentioned earlier, No Holds Barred. And then you got old bandwagon Evan up being our producer. I got to give him a little tap on the shoulder. And then
Vince Talk Today.
Yeah, no, I was thinking of the shows.
So many shows, man.
Thank you for giving us the time and watching us. And first, please, if you're having any type of mental situation, mental breakdown, anything that you think you're having problems with, our lines are open on social media. They're open to our producers, Bobby, Evan. Hit us up. We are here to listen because there's always someone out there that is willing to help you, and we're here for Finch Talk Sports Network. Bret and I are prior veterans. We've been through it. We know. We've seen it in person.
22 a day.
Yeah, we want to go ahead and make sure even the civilians are good. So just like football, we got your six.